In the spring of 1919, New Orleans was already a city living under the shadow of a phantom killer. For months, a mysterious figure had haunted its neighborhoods, breaking into homes in the middle of the night, wielding an axe, and leaving behind a trail of blood and unanswered questions. Families barred their doors, police scrambled for clues, and newspapers struggled to capture the hysteria that spread from street to street. He was faceless, elusive, and terrifying, but his legend was only about to grow. For in March of that year, the killer who had been dubbed the Axeman of New Orleans decided to reveal his voice not through capture nor confession, but through the printed word. It arrived like a storm. A letter delivered to the New Orleans Times-Picayune and other local papers, written in an almost theatrical style, dripping with arrogance and menace. The letter was signed by none other than the killer himself, or at least someone claiming to be him. Whether it was truly penned by the murderer may never be known, but the words were unmistakable in their intent to terrify, to taunt, and to toy with an entire city already trembling in fear. The letter began with an otherworldly flourish. Esteemed mortal, it read, "They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth." From the very first line, it declared the writer as something beyond human, a phantom, a demon, an unstoppable force beyond mortal law. It wasn't enough to kill. The Axeman wanted to shape his own mythology. He wanted to be remembered. And in New Orleans, a city where mystery and superstition walked hand in hand with music and celebration, he found the perfect stage. But the letter did not stop with threats or boasting. It contained something far stranger. And it was this twist that would secure the Axeman's place in history forever. The killer announced that on the night of Tuesday, March 19, 1919, he would prowl the city again. He warned that he would strike down anyone who dared to sleep in silence. But, and here was the bizarre, almost surreal condition, he promised to spare any house where jazz music was playing. If everyone has a jazz band going, he wrote, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. It was madness wrapped in melody. A killer who had stalked a city with brutal violence was now dictating its soundtrack. And the citizens of New Orleans, already lovers of music, already steeped in the rhythms of jazz, were suddenly caught in a macabre test of survival. That night, March 19th, the entire city turned into one giant concert hall. From the French Quarter to the outer neighborhoods, jazz poured from every corner. Families who could not afford a band dragged out old gramophones and wooden tied, letting scratchy records play into the humid night air. Bars and clubs hired extra musicians, throwing open their doors to terrify patrons who wanted to drink, dance, and most importantly stay alive. One journalist later described the city as a cacophony of horns, drums, and laughter desperately clinging to life. For one night, fear and music became inseparable. Imagine the scene. The narrow streets of New Orleans choked with sound, neighbors peeking through curtains to see who was playing and who was not, the faint glow of lanterns mixing with the wails of saxophones. In every district, the music carried a new meaning, not celebration, but survival. Jazz, already the heartbeat of the city, now became its shield against death. And through it all, people wondered, would the Axeman strike? Would some unlucky family who refused or forgot to play music fall victim to the killer's blade? That night passed without a single murder. Whether by coincidence, by mercy, or because the letter itself had been nothing more than a cruel hoax, New Orleans was spared. But the impact of the Axeman's jazz letter was profound. Overnight, the killer transformed from a local criminal into a legend. No longer was he just a faceless murderer lurking in the shadows. He had become a mythological figure, larger than life, tied forever to the soul of the city and to the music that defined it. For months afterward, people debated the letter endlessly. Was it really written by the Axeman? Or was it a prank by someone who knew the city's anxieties and wanted to exploit them? The police, humiliated by their inability to catch the killer, dismissed it as a cruel stunt. But to the ordinary citizens who had lived through that night of forced celebration, it was real enough. They had felt the fear. They had heard the music echoing in the darkness. Historians and criminologists still wrestle with the mystery today. The murders attributed to the Axeman followed no clear pattern, no obvious motive. His victims were orphan grocers, many of them Italian immigrants, but beyond that the killings seemed almost random. Was he a madman? A racial vigilante? A serial killer with a taste for chaos? The truth was buried in blood and speculation. But what is certain is this. the letter cemented his immortality. Even now, more than a century later, the story of the Axeman of New Orleans is inseparable from jazz. Musicians have written songs about him, most famously the Axeman's Jazz, a haunting piece that plays with the idea of death and rhythm walking hand in hand. In popular culture, the Axeman has appeared in novels, TV shows, and even horror anthologies, always depicted as the shadowy figure who let music decide who lived and who died. In many ways, that March night in 1919 tells us as much about New Orleans as it does about the killer. Faced with fear, the people did not hide in silence. They did not shutter their windows and cower in the dark. Instead, they gathered in bars, on porches, and in clubs. They turned up the volume. They played their horns. They sang and danced not in joy, but in defiance. The city fought terror with music, and for one strange, unforgettable night, jazz became the most powerful weapon against death itself. The Axeman may have vanished into history, never caught, never identified, but his words still echo. He may have intended to terrify, but in the end, he gave New Orleans a story, unlike any other night when a killer's threat became a city symphony. And as we look back more than a century later, we are left with the same haunting questions. Was the letter real? Did the killer truly write it? Or was it the invention of a twisted prankster? Did the Axeman really spare the city because of its music? Or was it all coincidence? We may never know, but perhaps the mystery is the point. Perhaps the Axeman understood something about human fear, that sometimes the terror we imagine is more powerful than the terror we see. Because on that night, March 19, 1919, the city of New Orleans danced with death and survived. Thank you for watching Crimes Through Time. If you found this story haunting, hit the like button and subscribe for more dark chapters from history. And tell us in the comments, do you think the Axeman really wrote the jazz letter? Or was it all a hoax that spiraled into legend? We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay safe,